ladies and gentlemen, lovers of chaos, disaster enthusiasts, professional third-wheel observers, and those who clap when arguments get interesting. Have you ever witnessed a wedding so catastrophic that the bride eloped with baked goods, the groom dueled his own reflection, and a goat filed an emotional complaint? No? Good. Because today, you will. And if you think you're just going to sit there, enjoy this madness for free, and not subscribe, I will personally arrange a marriage between you and your worst decision. Yes, legally, spiritually, with a goat as your best man. Don't test me. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III was not running. She would never run. Running implied panic. This was not panic. This was a highly dignified, extremely fast, reputation-preserving exit from a situation that had, once again, or dissolved into screaming, sobbing, and someone throwing decorative fruit. Behind her, "You ruined my life. I didn't know you had a twin. That's not the problem." Calamity picked up her pace. "Another successful emotional catastrophe," she muttered, adjusting her hat like a woman who had long accepted that consequences were more of a suggestion. Because Lady Calamity was not just any matchmaker. She was the royal matchmaker. Feared, respected, legally questioned. Her reputation was unmatched, mostly because no one else had ever achieved such consistent, creative destruction in the field of romance. Her distinguished achievements: a bride once eloped, with the wedding cake, not a slice, the entire cake, 3 tiers. She carried it like destiny. A groom challenged his own reflection to a duel after not liking the attitude. The reflection won, emotionally. And then there was the incident, the goat incident. No one spoke about it directly. There were hearings, documents, a brief exile. The goat, disturbingly, had representation. The case was still ongoing. Calamity stopped briefly at the palace gates, catching her breath and her dignity. She straightened her posture, lifted her chin, practiced her "I am competent" face. "Love is patient, love is kind," she whispered. A loud crash echoed from behind her. Someone screamed about betrayal and soup. She didn't turn around. "Love is currently setting a carriage on fire." She nodded once. Accurate. Just as she prepared to disappear into the safety of her office, a royal guard appeared. Tall, serious, unfortunate timing. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III. She froze, slowly turned, smiled the smile of a woman who had absolutely considered fleeing the kingdom. "Yes? His Majesty, King Dramastian Thunderflap the Unnecessarily Majestic, requests your presence, immediately." There it was. The tone. The "you are in trouble but we are being polite about it" tone. Calamity's soul gently left her body and took a short walk. "Immediately?" she repeated, already knowing the answer. "Immediately." Of course. Of course it was immediately. Not later, not tomorrow, not whenever you've emotionally recovered. Immediately. As she followed the guard through the grand halls of the palace, her mind raced. Had he heard about the cake? The duel? The goat? No. Worse. He had heard about all of it. At once. In detail. With witnesses. She stopped outside the throne room doors, took a deep breath, then another, then a third, just in case her soul wanted to come back. "Well," she whispered to herself, "this is it. Execution? Exile? Being legally banned from romance? All strong possibilities." The doors creaked open, and there he sat. King Dramastian Thunderflap the Unnecessarily Majestic, radiating power, authority, and the unmistakable energy of a man who had reached the absolute limit of his patience. His gaze locked onto her. Calm, controlled, dangerous. "Lady Calamity," he said. She bowed. Perfectly. Gracefully. Like a woman who was about to be professionally ended. "Your Majesty." A pause. A long, heavy, judgment-filled pause. Then, "We need to talk about your work." Calamity smiled. Because what else was there to do? Scream? Cry? Blame the goat? Tempting, but very tempting. But instead, she stood there, dignified and composed, knowing, deep in her bones, it was over for her. The throne room felt tense, not the normal royal decorum tense. No, this was the kind of silence that suggested someone had recently screamed into a pillow and was now choosing diplomacy as a last resort. King Dramastian Thunderflap, the unnecessarily majestic, leaned forward on his throne, fingers steepled, eyes locked onto Lady Calamity like she personally invented chaos. Which, to be fair, she kind of had. A scroll sat beside him, thick, suspiciously thick. Calamity glanced at it once and immediately looked away. "We will not be discussing the scroll," the king said. Calamity: "I didn't say anything." King: "Your face did." He stood. Slowly. Dramatically. Like a man who had practiced this moment in the mirror and won. "Lady Calamity," he began, voice calm in the way storms are calm right before they destroy villages. "My kingdom is unraveling." He began pacing. "Nobles are dueling over misunderstandings. Engagements are ending in lawsuits. Someone married a goat." Calamity, quickly. "Allegedly." King, without missing a beat. "Legally." Pause. Heavy. Personal. Judgmental. Then he turned to her. Fully. Decisively. This was it. The sentence. The execution. The dramatic exile speech. Instead, "I want a wife." Calamity blinked. Once. Twice. She was not prepared for this direction. The king raised a finger, like a professor of suffering about to clarify something extremely important. "Not a war." Another finger. "Not a festival." Another finger. He stared directly into her soul. "Not a goat." Calamity nodded slowly. "Very reasonable standards, Your Majesty." He stepped closer. Too close. The kind of close where accountability lives. "Can you do that?" There it was. A simple question. A dangerous question. A question with consequences. Calamity smiled. Carefully, like someone choosing their last words. "Define can." Silence. The king stared at her. She stared back. A bird somewhere outside made a poor life choice. Then he exhaled. Slowly, like a man adjusting his expectations with visible pain. "You will find me a suitable wife," he said. "A calm woman, a stable woman, someone who does not incite chaos, violence, or livestock involvement." Calamity nodded like she was taking notes, mentally underlining livestock involvement 3 times. He turned, walking back to his throne. "And you have 1 month." Calamity's smile twitched. 1 month? For her? That was aggressive optimism. He sat, then added, almost casually, "If this ends the way your previous arrangements have—" He gestured vaguely toward the window, where distant shouting could still be heard. "I will have no choice but to take corrective action." Calamity swallowed. "Corrective?" The king gave her a polite smile, the kind that had ended careers. "I hear the royal kitchens are looking to diversify their menu." Pause. Long pause, very long pause. Calamity straightened, dignity activated, survival instincts screaming. "Understood, Your Majesty." As she turned to leave, the king added one final line. "No chaos." She stopped, just for a second, then nodded. "Of course." And as the doors closed behind her, but Lady Calamity Vexoria. Snifflebloom III did something she had never done before in her entire, disastrous career. She took this assignment seriously, for about 5 seconds. Then she whispered, "I am absolutely going to ruin this man's life." Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III approached this mission with a level of seriousness previously unseen in her career, which meant she brought a notebook titled potentially non-disastrous humans, a measuring scale for emotional instability, and a growing sense of dread. "I need someone calm," she muttered, pacing through the capital. "Someone quiet, predictable, mild, a woman with the personality of unbuttered bread." The search, a parade of disqualifications. It started optimistically. It ended quickly. Candidate number 1, Lady Flambrietta Sparkleshade. She laughed. Not just a normal laugh, a full-body chandelier shaking, echoing through generations kind of laugh. Calamity immediately wrote, "Absolutely not. This laugh could start a war." Candidate number 2, Duchess Opiniona Loudsworth. She had thoughts, strong ones, multiple, back-to-back, unprovoked. "I believe—" Calamity closed her notebook. Rejected. Candidate number 3, Baroness Eyebrow Adramaflare. Her eyebrows moved, expressively, suspiciously. They told entire stories without permission. At one point, one eyebrow rose higher than the other, and Calamity physically stepped back. No, I refuse to compete with facial storytelling." Hours passed. Then a full day. Then 2. Calamity grew weaker, more desperate. At one point, she briefly considered pairing the king with a decorative vase. "At least it's quiet," she whispered. And then she found her, in the most aggressively uneventful part of the kingdom, the Beige District. A place so calm it felt like time itself had taken a nap. No shouting, no drama, no suspicious goats, just stillness. And there she was, sitting on a plain wooden bench, holding a plain cup, existing quietly. Miss Planetta Mildcrum. Calamity approached cautiously, like one might approach a rare, fragile creature that might disappear if startled, or worse, develop a personality. "Miss Mildcrum?" she asked. Planetta looked up, slowly, calmly, with the emotional intensity of a nap. "Yes?" No excitement, no curiosity, no dramatic eyebrow movement. Calamity felt hope, real, dangerous hope. Profile assessment, immediate perfection. Once returned, extra change. Out of guilt. "It wasn't mine," Planetta explained simply. "Or thinks excitement is a bit much." "People are very loud about things," she added. "Owns 3 identical spoons, in case one is unavailable." Calamity almost cried. She circled her like a scholar discovering a new species. "No sudden emotional outbursts?" "No." "No tendency toward chaos?" "I avoid it." "No interest in drama?" "It seems exhausting." Calamity closed her notebook, slowly, reverently, like she had just found the answer to all her problems. "Perfect." Planetta blinked. "Something wrong?" Calamity smiled, a terrifying, relieved, slightly unhinged smile. "No," she said. "Everything is about to go very, very right." She turned dramatically, already envisioning her redemption. The king would be pleased. The kingdom would stabilize. Her career would be saved. No chaos, no disasters, no goats. She looked back at Planetta one last time and declared with absolute confidence, this woman could de-escalate a thunderstorm. She could not trust me. The throne room had been prepared with extreme caution. No musicians, no dramatic lighting, no emotional nobles lurking in corners. Even the air felt supervised. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III stood near the entrance, radiating forced confidence and quiet desperation. "Remember," she whispered to herself, "calm, stable, beige." Behind her stood Miss Planetta Mildcrum of the Beige District, unbothered, unimpressed, possibly thinking about spoons. The doors opened, and in walked King Dramastian Thunderflap the unnecessarily majestic, tall, regal, dramatic without trying. A man built entirely out of authority and unresolved expectations. But he approached with measured steps, paused, looked at Planetta. Planetta looked back. Silence, not awkward, not tense, just quiet, like two completely different genres had accidentally met. The king gestured toward his throne. Magnificent, gold, intricate, slightly aggressive in design. Planetta tilted her head, studied it, then said very calmly, "It looks itchy." Calamity choked on air. Not loudly, but internally, catastrophic. The king blinked. Once, slowly, like his brain had to reboot. "I beg your pardon?" Planetta nodded toward the throne. "All those carvings, no smooth surface. If you sit wrong, that's a problem." A pause. A deep, historical pause. Somewhere in the distance, a guard reconsidered his career. The king straightened slightly, adjusted his composure like a man refusing to be defeated by this. "Einrid is a symbol of power." Planetta. "It's a symbol of discomfort." Calamity stared at the floor. "We're dead," she whispered to herself. The king shifted tactics. "And what do you think of me?" "Ah, yes, the aura question. A classic." Planetta looked at him. Really looked. From crown, to posture, to overall presence. Then, too shiny. Calamity's soul left again. This time it packed a bag. The king froze. "Shiny." Planetta nodded. "Distracting. I feel like I should squint." Another pause, longer this time. He stared at her. She stared back, unmoved, unimpressed, unafraid. Then, without warning, Planetta walked past him, picked up his cup of tea, and drank it. Calamity. "Oh." Too late. Way too late. The king turned slowly. "That was my tea." Planetta handed the empty cup back. It was there. Silence. Pure. Powerful. Our unrecoverable silence. The king looked at her. Really looked this time. Not as a ruler, not as a judge, but as a man encountering something deeply confusing. Finally he spoke, carefully. "You're different." Planetta nodded, equally calm, equally direct. "You're loud." And that was it. That was the moment. The exact, irreversible moment everything went wrong. Because something shifted in the king's expression, something dangerous, something irreversible, something stupid. King Dramastian, internally. This is the one. This woman has no fear, no restraint, no respect for tea. She is either the solution to all my problems, or the cause of entirely new ones. A beat, a decision, a catastrophic, life-altering decision. I will ruin my life for her. Across the room, Lady Calamity felt it, like a disturbance in the fabric of sanity. She didn't know what had just happened, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This is worse than the goat. Word spread through the palace like a scandal with legs. The king has chosen someone. Not a princess, not a duchess, not even a mildly dramatic noblewoman. No, he chose Planetta Mildcrum of the Beige District, a woman whose greatest known achievement was owning 3 identical spoons and trusting none of them fully. The court gathered. Silks, jewels, perfumes that could legally be classified as weapons. Every noble stood ready to assess, judge, and emotionally overreact. Then Planetta walked in. No dramatic entrance, no nervousness, no awareness that this room was designed to intimidate people into developing personalities. She just entered, looked around, and immediately looked tired. Lady Calamity stood in the corner, gripping a glass of water like it was emotional support. "Please," she whispered to the universe, "just this once, behave." And now, Casual Damages begins. Duke Thrombelius Wafflegrave approached first. A man built like a statement. Tall, broad, confident in a way that suggested he had never been disagreed with. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly, "it is an honor." Planetta looked at him, paused, tilted her head, then said, "You're structurally disappointing." Silence, immediate, violent. The Duke blinked. What?" Planetta gestured vaguely. "I expected more height or presence. Something is missing. Across the room, a noble dropped a glass. No one acknowledged it. Calamity closed her eyes. "We are spiraling," she whispered. For second victim. Unfortunate social interaction. A noblewoman, Lady Velveeta Crumplespire, approached next, smiling too wide, walking too carefully, the kind of woman who had practiced this moment in a mirror. "Welcome to court," she said sweetly. "We are so delighted to have you." Plenetta looked at her, really looked, then asked calmly, "Are you always like this, or is today special?" The smile froze, then cracked, then spiritually collapsed. "I beg your pardon?" "Plenetta, you seem strained." Somewhere, someone whispered, "She's not surviving this." The banquet, final blow. Dinner was served, an elegant, carefully orchestrated display of royal refinement, every fork placed with intention, every movement rehearsed, every bite judged. Plenetta sat beside the king, looked at the table, looked at the utensils, picked one up, paused, then glanced at the noble across from her, a man aggressively eating like he was trying to defeat the food. She leaned forward slightly and said, "You're holding your fork like it owes you money." The table went still, utterly still. The man froze mid-bite. "What?" Plenetta gestured. "That grip is emotional." A servant coughed. Another turned away to laugh and immediately regretted it. Calamity was no longer drinking water. She was gripping the glass like she might throw it at fate. At the head of the table sat Empress Mutterella Doompetal, a woman carved from authority, suspicion, and generational disappointment. She had watched everything, every word, every interaction, every small, precise act of social destruction. Finally she spoke, low, controlled, terrifying, "Or this woman will destroy us." The room held its breath. Eyes shifted to the king, waiting, hoping, praying for sanity. The king leaned back slightly, watching Plenetta as she calmly ate like none of this existed. There was something in his expression, something deeply concerning. Then he said, "I hope so." And just like that, the court realized something horrifying. This was not a problem. This was a decision. Calamity, internal collapse. He likes it. He likes the chaos. I have not solved anything. I have made it worse. At the center of it all, Plenetta took another bite of food, looked around at the silent, stunned nobles, and asked genuinely, "Why is everyone so tense?" No one answered, because no one had the strength left. And that night, in the grand palace of Catastrophia von Dramathornia, society didn't collapse. It simply stopped coping. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III had reached a professional crossroads. On one hand, fix the situation. On the other hand, pack her bags, change her name, and become a quiet vegetable merchant in a village where no one knew what love was. She chose to try. A mistake. Plan number 1. Quiet tea, controlled environment, low risk. Calamity personally arranged the setting. Small table, soft lighting, no witnesses, no goats. She even inspected the chairs for emotional stability. "This is it," she whispered. "A calm interaction, gentle conversation, no chaos." The king and Plenetta sat across from each other. Tea was poured. Silence settled. For one glorious second, peace existed. Then Plenetta spoke. "Why do you want to marry me?" The king blinked. What?" Plenetta leaned forward slightly. "Be specific." Calamity froze in the corner, pen hovering over her notebook. "No," she whispered. "We are not doing this." The king straightened. "Because I find you intriguing." Plenetta. "That's vague." "Because you challenge me." "That sounds exhausting." "Because I—" He stopped, looked at her, really looked, then said it. "Because I think about you when I should be doing important things. Silence. Heavy. Personal. Dangerous. Planeta nodded slowly. That seems inefficient. Calamity snapped her notebook shut. This is not tea. This is an interrogation. Plan number 2. Romantic walk. Nature will fix this. Calamity pivoted. Fresh air, she muttered. Nature. Simplicity. No talking required. The royal gardens were perfect. Flowers blooming. Birds chirping. A light breeze carrying absolutely no warning signs. Where the king and Planeta walked side by side. Quiet, peaceful, manageable. Then, a swan appeared. Not just any swan. A large, aggressive, deeply offended swan. It stared at them. They stared at it. Planeta tilted her head. Why does it look angry? The swan charged. Chaos. Immediate. Unavoidable. The king. Why is it running? Planeta. Oh, it's coming for us. They ran. Dignity left first. Calamity screamed from a distance. Why is it always animals? The swan flapped, honked, and pursued them with the energy of unresolved issues. At one point, the king tripped over a decorative bush. Planeta kept running. I will come back for you if this becomes serious. Eventually, guards intervened. The swan was escorted away. Still angry, still judging. Calamity stood in the garden, hair slightly undone, sanity completely gone. Or it was a walk, she whispered. Just a walk. Plan number 3. Poetry night. Emotions but controlled. At this point, Calamity had stopped believing in success, but she continued anyway, out of habit or denial. A small, intimate setting was arranged. Candles, soft music, a controlled emotional environment. Expressing feelings through poetry, Calamity explained weakly, can create connection. The king stood, cleared his throat, looked at Planeta, and began, Your presence unsettles my carefully ordered world. Planeta listened, calm, focused, evaluating. You are the storm I did not prepare for. Calamity nodded slowly. Yes. Good. Dramatic, but acceptable. You are the thought that interrupts my logic. The king finished. Silence followed. A vulnerable, fragile silence. Then Planeta spoke, or that was emotionally loud. The king blinked. Loud. Planeta nodded. Very expressive, slightly overwhelming. I would recommend fewer feelings per sentence. Calamity dropped her head into her hands. Hours later, alone in a hallway, Calamity finally snapped. Not gracefully, not quietly, but completely. Why? She demanded of the ceiling, the walls, and possibly fate itself. Is she more chaotic than my worst decisions? She paced. Wild. Unhinged. Enlightened in the worst way. I picked boring. I filtered for boring. I specifically requested... She stopped, realization hitting her like a falling chandelier. She's not chaotic on purpose. Pause. Slow turn. Horrified understanding. This is just how she is. Across the palace, the king was smiling to himself like a man who had discovered something dangerous and decided to keep it. Planeta, meanwhile, was eating a pastry she did not ask for and did not explain. And Lady Calamity? Lady Calamity looked into the void, and the void filed a complaint. It happened slowly, then all at once, then aggressively, then publicly. King Dramastian Thunderflap the unnecessarily majestic, ruler of Catastrophia von Dramathornia, commander of armies, destroyer of enemies, owner of an unnecessarily confident posture, was gone. Finished, emotionally compromised, spiritually unemployed. Symptom number 1. Questionable decisions. The War Council gathered. Maps spread out. Generals ready. Tension high. Your Majesty, one general said, pointing dramatically. If we strike at dawn... The king raised a hand. No. Silence. No. Oh, Your Majesty? The king leaned back, thinking deeply, dangerously. We will postpone the war. The room froze. Postpone the war? He nodded. Calm, certain, completely lost. She looked tired. The general stared at him. Who? The king didn't even hesitate. Planeta. A pause, long enough for reality to sit down and reconsider everything. One general tried again, carefully. Respectfully, Your Majesty. What does that have to do with everything? The war was cancelled. The enemy received a letter. It read, "Not today, she's resting." Symptom number 2. Poetry, severe case. It started in private, whispers of ink and regret. Then it spread. Servants found crumpled papers around the palace. Your silence speaks louder than my victories. Your indifference wounds me more than swords. You are efficient. One guard read a line out loud and immediately apologized to himself. Calamity reviewed one poem, paused, then said, "This is not literature. This is a cry for help." Symptom number 3, constant proximity. Wherever Planeta went, the king was there. She walked through the corridor. He followed, not closely, not subtly, just present. She turned. "Why are you here?" He straightened immediately. "Security." She looked around. Empty hallway, no threats, no danger, no emotional swans. From what? A pause. He considered several answers. All bad. Unexpected situations. Planeta nodded slowly. You are the unexpected situation. He accepted this. At this point, or the palace had stopped pretending. The king was not managing his feelings. He was being managed by them. He watched her like she was a puzzle, a problem, a phenomenon he could not solve. One evening, standing on a balcony, he said quietly, "I have conquered nations." A pause, soft, reflective, deeply embarrassing. Yet I cannot conquer her disapproval. Planeta, standing beside him, didn't even look up. "Good," he nodded. "Yes, good." And that was it. That was the moment. No dignity, no resistance, no return. Calamity, final diagnosis. Lady Calamity stood in the hallway, watching the king follow Planeta at a respectful but deeply unnecessary distance. She didn't write anything down. There was no point. "He's in love," she said flatly. Pause. Longer pause. Disgracefully. Across the palace, Planeta stopped walking, turned slightly, looked at the king. "You're doing it again?" "Doing what?" "Following me?" He nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "A beat. A very honest, very unfortunate beat." "I don't know." Planeta considered this, then shrugged. "All right," and kept walking. The king followed. Of course he did. And somewhere, deep in the crumbling structure of logic and reason, Lady Calamity felt something snap. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to know. There is no fixing this. By this point, the palace had stopped asking if the king would propose and started placing bets on how badly it would go. A quick recap of failure. Proposal number 1. In the gardens. Romantic, peaceful, interrupted by the goat. Not just present, participating. Proposal number 2. During dinner. Candlelight. Elegant. Planeta started an argument about unnecessary forks. The king forgot the question. Proposal number 3. On the balcony. Sunset. Emotional vulnerability. Planeta walked away mid-sentence because this feels like it's going somewhere. Proposal number 4. Private library. Quiet. Intellectual setting. They debated for 20 minutes about whether marriage was efficient. No conclusion reached. Proposal number 5. During a carriage ride. Intimate, confined, no escape. Carriage broke, driver left. Goat seen in distance. Suspicious. Proposal number 6. Public declaration. Bold, dramatic. Planeta blinked, said no, and asked for a snack. At this point, even Lady Calamity had stopped interfering. She was just observing, like a scholar documenting the collapse of a powerful man. Proposal number 7. The final attempt. No grand setup. No music. No witnesses. Or no goats, suspiciously. Just a quiet moment in a hallway. Planeta standing there, holding something she definitely did not ask for. The king approached, paused, looked at her. No speech, no poetry, no emotional spiral, just, "Will you marry me?" Plenetta blinked. Once, twice, looked at him like she was evaluating a long-term inconvenience. "This feels like a long-term mistake." The king nodded immediately. No hesitation, no defense, no pride. "Yes." Silence. A very serious, very quiet silence. Plenetta studied him. Really studied him, like a problem she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. Then, a sigh. Small, resigned, dangerous. "Fine." The universe paused, just for a second, to confirm what had just happened. Then she added, "But if this becomes embarrassing, I'm leaving." The king nodded again. Faster this time. We're understood. And just like that, it was done, across the hallway, behind a decorative pillar, half-hidden, fully invested. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III witnessed everything. She stared, unblinking, unmoving, processing, failing to process. Then, slowly, she sank to the floor. It worked. A beat, a realization, a worse realization. "That's worse," she clutched her head. "I was prepared for disaster. I understand disaster. I manage disaster." She looked up, eyes wide, soul gone. "This is success. I don't know how to handle success." Down the hallway, the king and Plenetta stood in mutual agreement. No excitement, no celebration, no visible joy. Just a quiet, deeply questionable decision. Plenetta looked at him again. "You're going to regret this." The king smiled. Calm. Certain. Completely doomed. "And I already don't." And somewhere in the palace, a goat sneezed. Calamity, still on the floor, whispered, "It's coming back." Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III made a decision. A bold decision. A reckless decision. A decision that history would later describe as adorably naive. "This wedding," she declared, gripping her clipboard like a warrior gripping a sword, "will be simple." The universe heard her, paused, then said, "No." Day 1. Invitations, the beginning of the end. Calamity personally approved the guest list. Carefully selected, controlled, safe. No unstable couples, no dramatic nobles, no goats. She triple-checked everything, sent the invitations, slept peacefully. The next morning, she woke up to chaos. Immediate, aggressive, personalized chaos. A messenger burst in. "My lady, what we have? A situation." She grabbed the guest list, looked at it, froze. This was not her list. This was something else, something cursed. Who received invitations? 3 ex-couples who were currently suing each other, a woman who had been emotionally banned from public events, a man who once proposed to himself and said yes, and a baker. Just a baker? No title, no context, just, "Please attend the royal wedding." Calamity stared into the distance. "Why is there a baker?" No one had answers. The baker, however, sent a reply. Very polite, very confused. Most responses were concerning. But one stood out. A letter arrived. No sender name, just a hoof print. Inside, "I will be there." Calamity didn't need to ask. She didn't want to ask. She knew. "The goat RSVP'd," she whispered. A pause. A deep, spiritual pause, but emotionally. Day 3. The venue, betrayal by location. Calamity visited the ceremony grounds. Perfect, elegant, peaceful. Then she heard it. Metal clashing, shouting, someone yelling, "For honor and also personal reasons." She turned slowly and saw a full-scale sword tournament. Already happening, already booked, already committed. Calamity approached the organizer. Very calmly, very carefully. "Excuse me," she said. "This venue is reserved for a royal wedding." The organizer checked his notes, nodded. "Yes." Calamity blinked. "Yes?" "Yes. Wedding in the morning, tournament in the afternoon." She stared at him, Long, hard, unblinking. And if the wedding runs long? The organizer shrugged. Then it becomes interactive. Calamity turned away, walked 3 steps, and then whispered, "Of course it does." Day 5. The priest, final loss of hope. The royal priest arrived, calm, experienced, emotionally stable, exactly what was needed. Calamity handed him the guest list. "Please review." He read, silently, slowly, then faster, then stopped. He looked up, eyes wide, faith shaken. "Is this a ceremony or a conflict?" Calamity said nothing, because honesty felt dangerous. He looked back down, saw the names again, saw the patterns, saw the chaos. Then, very gently, he placed the list down. "I cannot officiate this." Calamity blinked. "You cannot?" He shook his head. "I value my peace." Then he left. Not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. Final status: complete collapse. Calamity stood alone in the planning room. Invitations ruined, guest list cursed, goat confirmed, venue compromised. Priest gone. She looked at her checklist. Every item crossed out, not because it was completed, but because it had failed. She laughed, soft at first, then louder, then with the energy of someone who had truly let go. "I tried," she said. A pause, a glance upward, directly at fate. "I tried to make it simple." Another pause, longer this time, accepting, defeated, enlightened. The universe took that personally. Across the kingdom, invitations continued to arrive. Arguments began before the wedding even started. The baker bought a new outfit. The goat prepared spiritually. And somewhere, quietly, calmly, Planeta Mildcrumb sat with her 3 identical spoons, unaffected, unbothered. "This will be loud," she said. And for once, she was absolutely correct. The day arrived. Against all logic, against all warnings, ours against several strongly worded letters. The royal wedding of King Dramastian Thunderflap, the unnecessarily majestic, and Miss Planeta Mildcrumb of the Beige District, was happening. Guests gathered, tension high, ex-couples glaring at each other like unresolved plot lines. The baker sat in the front row, holding a gift he did not understand. Calamity stood at the altar. Not calm, not stable, just present. Barely. "All right," she whispered. "No surprises." The music started. Not soft, not elegant, not wedding-like. Battle music, loud, aggressive, emotionally prepared for violence. A trumpet screamed, drums declared war. Someone in the crowd instinctively grabbed a chair like it was a weapon. Calamity turned slowly to the musicians. "Why?" One of them shrugged. "This is what we were given." Of course it was. Where with the priest gone, a replacement had been found. Standing proudly at the altar was a man with the energy of someone who had never been told no. "I am Sir Relatium Pigeonworth," he announced, "and I have once successfully married 2 pigeons." Silence. Deep, reflective. Calamity leaned toward him. Were they in love? He paused. They tolerated each other. "Good enough," she muttered. The king stood at the altar, composed, focused, emotionally unstable, but in a dignified way. Planeta arrived. No dramatic entrance, no hesitation. Just walked in like she was attending something mildly inconvenient. They stood side by side. Sir Pigeonworth cleared his throat. "Whereas we are gathered here today to witness whatever this is." Before he could continue, a voice from the crowd. "You still owe me for the jam." Another voice. "It wasn't about the jam." The argument escalated immediately. 2 ex-couples stood up, pointing, accusing, revisiting history no one asked for. Calamity closed her eyes. "Not now. Please, not now." No one listened. Despite the chaos, the officiant pressed on. You lied about the pastry." "It was strategic omission." The king raised his voice slightly. Planeta. She looked at him, calm, focused, unaffected by the chaos. Yes? He took a breath, ignored the shouting, ignored the collapsing structure of the event, ignored everything except her. I choose you. A pause. Planeta blinked, considered him, and then said, All right. And that was somehow the most stable part of the entire ceremony. Just as Sir Pigeonworth raised his hands to continue. The doors burst open, gasps, shock, resignation. The goat entered. Not casually, not subtly, in a veil. It walked down the aisle like it had done this before, like it had trained for this. The baker stood up. I knew this would happen. Calamity didn't even react. She just stared forward, eyes empty, soul on break. Of course, she whispered. The goat stopped near the altar, looked around, judged everyone, then bleated, loudly, emotionally. Sir Pigeonworth, unfazed, raised his hands again. Do you both agree to this legally questionable union? The king. Yes. Planeta. Yes. The goat. Bah. I'm counting that, the officiant said. He clapped his hands once. Then by the power vaguely granted to me, I pronounce you married. The battle music resumed. The arguing escalated into new arguments. Someone threw jam. The goat remained, present. The baker started crying, unclear why, in the center of it all. The king looked at Planeta. Calm, certain. Absolutely doomed. You stayed. Planeta shrugged. It's not boring. He smiled. Across the chaos, Lady Calamity began laughing. Not loudly, not wildly, just softly, like someone who had finally accepted reality. This is my masterpiece, she whispered. The battle music is still playing. Too loud, too aggressive, emotionally committed to violence. Someone in the back is still arguing about jam like it's a national crisis. The goat adjusts its veil. Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III is no longer blinking. Sir Relatium Pigeonworth, officiant, former pigeon specialist. We will now proceed with the vows, assuming no one else objects, escalates, or transforms into livestock. A pause. No one sits down. He nods anyway. Excellent. Progress. King Dramastian's vows. The king steps forward. Battle drums intensify for no reason. He ignores them. He ignores everything. Except her. Planeta Mildcrum. A breath. Deep. Steady. Questionable. Before you, I was a man of order, dignity, and slightly aggressive posture. A noble in the crowd whispers, That posture was very aggressive. Now I am none of those things. You have insulted my throne, my court, and my elbows. A pause. He nods slightly. And I have never felt more alive. Somewhere, someone gasps. The goat stares, deeply invested. I vow to protect you, even when you are clearly the problem. Planeta nods once. Accurate. I vow to cancel wars, reschedule meetings, and emotionally spiral in your presence. A general faints quietly in the background. If you ever leave me. A pause, a dramatic, unnecessary pause. I will not recover. I will simply become dramatic scenery. Calamity whispers, He already is. You are my greatest mistake. The entire court leans in, and I choose you repeatedly. Silence. Actual silence, for the first time today. Then, someone drops a spoon. The moment is gone. Planeta's vows. Planeta steps forward. No nerves, no emotion, just evaluation. Dramastian Thunderflap. She pauses. Looks at him like she's reviewing a long-term contract. I did not plan to be here. A beat. I barely planned breakfast. The baker nods in agreement. You are loud, confusing, and emotionally excessive. The king nods. Proud. However, a pause, small, dangerous. You are also persistent. She considers him, like a problem that refuses to solve itself. A noble whispers, That's the most accurate description of him I've ever heard. I vow to tolerate you. A beat. Publicly. Calamity. She's generous today. I vow to correct you when you are wrong. She looks directly at him. Which will be often. The king. I look forward to it. If you become unbearable, I will leave temporarily. A pause. To prove a point. The goat bleats in approval. But... She exhales softly. I suppose you are interesting. A glance at the chaos around them. And I am bored. A final pause. The kind that decides things. So this will do. And somehow, that lands harder than poetry. Sir Pigeonworth raises his hands. Confident, questionable, committed. Do you both agree to this situation? King Dramastian. Yes. Planeta. Yes. The goat. Bah! I'm counting that, he says immediately. The goat screams. Loud, passionate, possibly symbolic. Someone claps. Too early, too enthusiastic. 2 guests stand up. You lied about the jam. It was a misunderstanding. The argument reignites. Stronger than before. Now with pointing. And in the center of it all, Lady Calamity starts laughing. Not politely, not softly, but like a woman who has seen the limits of reality and watched them give up. Ladies and gentlemen, survivors of chaos, witnesses of emotional destruction, and brave souls who stayed till the goat got character development, you have just watched a kingdom collapse. Politely. A matchmaker lose her sanity, professionally. A king abandon dignity, enthusiastically. And a boring woman turn an entire royal court into a support group for confusion. Now be honest with yourself. How did we get here? How did we start with, I want a calm wife, and end with, a war cancelled due to tiredness, a wedding officiated by a man with pigeon experience, a goat in a veil screaming like it pays taxes here? This is not a story. This is a warning. And if you think you can just walk away from this chaos, no. No, no, no. You don't get to witness this level of emotional damage and just disappear quietly. If you don't subscribe, Lady Calamity Vexoria Snifflebloom III will personally come out of retirement. Find your love life and optimize it, aggressively, with enthusiasm, and possibly livestock. You will wake up engaged. You will not know to who. There will be vows. They will be binding. The goat will be there. So do the smart thing. Subscribe. Like. Comment something chaotic so I know you're still mentally stable, or at least entertaining. Because in the kingdom of Catastrophia von Dramathornia, love is not patient. Love is not kind. Love is confused, aggressive, and already on its way to your house.